As Americans clash in the streets, we find ourselves fighting each other and our own history. As statues come down, what kind of narrative replaces them? And the autonomous car is gaining on you. What does it mean for the Motor City? Today is Sunday, August 27th, 2017, and this is Flashpoint. Hi, welcome to Flashpoint. Good to have you with us. Alas, summer is dwindling, and the kids are heading back to school, back to math and English and science and history. How will we teach history this year, and from this year forward for that matter? History is what it is. It is what happened. There's no changing that, but our view of it does change, doesn't it? I can't travel to Leningrad anymore. I can visit St. Petersburg, Russia, but that city's name is no longer a salute to Vladimir Lenin. It took no time at all for Iraqis to want to erase Saddam Hussein from their city squares. And what now in the U.S.? For years, we've venerated the American Civil War in fascinating ways. Civil War enthusiasts reenact battles with astonishing attention to detail. The Civil War sites from Gettysburg to Vicksburg still draw big crowds, and the kids still leave the souvenir shops with cork muskets and plastic bayonets. Military historians to this day still love to debate the battlefield strategies of George McClellan and Stonewall Jackson. And it still stands as the gold standard for a president who managed to keep this nation together through a bloodbath that at the time must have felt like the end of days. Yes, in an odd way, we celebrate that devastating chapter of American life. But now, in 2017, we're giving it a new look. In taking down the symbols of the Confederacy, are we rightly reestablishing our priorities and getting on the right side of history? Or are we losing touch with some American touchstones and shredding the rights of some to celebrate their heritage? And what of, say, Christopher Columbus or Detroit Mayor Albert Cobo, namesake of Cobo Hall? We will tackle some weighty questions this morning. And then, what does it mean to the auto capital of the world if you're not actually going to drive the car anymore? It's all this morning on Flashpoint. You know, for 9th and 10th grade, I attended Robert E. Lee High School in Springfield, Virginia. And I'll be honest, I'm troubled by the fact that I don't think I ever asked my black friends how they felt about attending a school named for the leader of the Confederate Army. But that question and many others are swirling right now. Let's talk about it. Very good to have with me Dan Krupa, history professor from the University of Detroit Mercy. Dan, thanks for coming this morning. Mildred Gaddis is back with us again from the Mildred Gaddis Show, serendipitously named, at WPZR. Carrie Moss, the executive director of the American Civil Liberties Union. Interesting times for the ACLU. And Nolan Finley, the editorial chief of the Detroit News. Thank you all very much for being here. Mildred, I want to start with you because we have three people at the table here who kind of spent a lot of time growing up in the South, you and I among them. And to the question that I posed, I guess I hadn't pondered enough earlier, growing up around all those monuments, anybody who's traveled through Civil War country knows what there's one every couple of miles, it seems. Give me your reflections on what we're watching happen.
You know, what's happening now?
Sure, okay. and the way that you grew up watching it, how
well,
it felt
of course,
at the time.
You know, I was born in New Orleans and I grew up in Mississippi.
Yeah.
And there was a reality that existed. But understand, I was born in the mid-50s and grew up in the 60s, so our focus for the most part was on moving forward. It did not mean that we were disenchanted with those statues and what they meant. What I've learned over the years, though, and especially as we watch this 21st century America unfold before our eyes, we never thought that the attitudes had changed. So this is not new to me. I think that what we have is a president who has made it a comfortable existence, an atmosphere for people with the ideologies and the philosophies of those men to come out and say that they are still who they were. I've never thought that there had been a shift in attitudes in great numbers. And we began to see that when President Barack Obama became president.
And that's now all washing back on these monuments that you seem to suggest you had a comfortable coexistence with once upon a time.
Yeah, they were there. We knew what they meant. We fought against what they stood for, but we didn't stop and focus solely on those monuments. It would be great to have them removed, but I know that for me and a lot of other people like me, our greater concern, however, is equal opportunity, economic freedom, And last year, and I'll say this and we'll get back to this, is for the last 2 years, and we're on par this year, we had over 1,000 black unarmed Americans killed by police who were never convicted. Yeah. We're concerned about those kinds of issues, equal access to education and others.
Dan, I mentioned that history doesn't change, but the way we reflect on it does. I'm curious as to your reflections as a history professor of what you've watched unfold and how that's sort of the impact it's going to have on what you do.
Well, the way I put it to students is similar to what you say. I usually say the past never changes, but history does, or in other words, the way we reconstruct the past all the time. Given different sources, different attitudes, different values that change over time, we start to see different attitudes in the contemporary setting that are very different than what would have been taking place, 20, 30, 40 years ago, or certainly 100 years ago. So I think what we're starting to see is more and more of a shift, especially after the catalyst of the type of uprisings and types of violence that we've had in American cities recently, that people are starting to take a closer look at the past and understanding that, yeah, history is problematic. History, it can be troubling, but it's something that we have to look at in an open dialogue to get different ideas.
I read something recently where you mentioned that when you started talking about this with some students, they really weren't all that acquainted with who Robert E. Lee was.
No, that is perhaps even more disturbing. Is that when I actually put the image of Robert E. Lee up on the board for students to consider this question: should these monuments be taken down? And their question to me was, well, who is Robert E. Lee? And so that's disturbing in itself.
Yes, it is. Well, in fact, Carrie, that's what we've got a collision here of the kind of sensitivities that we're developing that Mildred's talking about. Also, it may be mashing up against some historical illiteracy, which is not a great laboratory for all these things to come together.
Right. I think it was Eric Holder who said that history simmers beneath cities like Ferguson, right? I mean, we never can escape our history, and it is going to inform how we look at the issues today. And if you don't know history, right, you're really going to be ill-prepared for the kinds of serious issues that are, right, front and center right now.
Yeah, this is an interesting time for the ACLU, though, because as I sort of famously, I think, now know, the ACLU stood up for the rights of some of the Nazi and white supremacist protesters to have their say. It's really another interesting part of this collision is the freedom of speech portion of it.
Well, let me say, I mean, the First Amendment protects the free exchange of ideas. It does not protect the free exchange of bullets.
Yes,
right?
Yes. Violence isn't protected.
Violence is not protected, and I think that what happened in Charlottesville is being kind of framed as free speech versus everything else, but I really think it was a failure of policing, and we haven't talked enough about that. And we contrast what happened in Charlottesville with what happened in Boston last week. I mean, if you look at aerial photographs, you can see how well managed that protest was. Yeah. In contrast, in Charlottesville, the police funneled the two groups, the protesters and the counter-protesters, down the same street. They stood there and watched and held back while people with torches and guns, right, aggressively went after others who were disagreeing with them. So I really see that as a failure of policing, and it's a tinderbox right now because the role of police, to Mildred's point about how many black people have been killed and nobody convicted, is very much front and center and driving the emotional tensions right now that are everywhere.
Nolan, you wrote about this tinderbox this past week, and you're a proud son of the South. Tell me a little bit about your reflections on where.
Well, you know, I will say, I was talking with a professor beforehand, you know, after the Civil War, the South very quickly romanticized the war and adopted this Gone with the Wind mentality. And I believe it was not so much clinging to the past, but coping with the devastation of the very poor decisions they made, at the start of the war. They lost 1 in 4 of their young men. They saw their culture, the economy, their education system, everything blasted back 100 years. So these were people looking for a justification, a reason that they could be
well, in a way, then what you're describing is them inventing a past, which is not really then what. Getting back to there's the past.
In many ways, they were nostalgized the past in ways that sort of altered the accuracy. But I do believe it helped them cope, and I think it was indulged because it was recognized that they needed that, and that it did help heal and bring them back, you know, into the fold. And I think we make a mistake when we say, oh gosh, everybody in the South who feels fondly about these monuments and these statues and the flag and all that, they're all racist and white supremacists. You know, I think when you do that, you're ignoring, you know, a lot of other reasons people feel this way, and you drive them and their feelings underground until they bubble up like they did last November and elected Donald Trump.
The central question right now. I got to take a quick break, and I'm going to let Mildred get the first shot in, and we'll let everybody jump in on that when we continue. This is Flashpoint on Local 4. Back with more in a second. Welcome back. Mildred Gaddis waited patiently through that entire break. You wanted to say.
Yes. The day, I believe it was the day after the election or a couple of days after the election, the New York Times ran an article asking the question, what happened on Election Day? How did Trump become president? There were 3 reasons, according to the experts they interviewed, not in this order. There was a concern about the decreasing status of white majority in America. The second was the fear and the concern about terrorists on American soil. The third one had to do with the wall, illegal immigrants coming into America. Coupled with that, from the very onset of the Trump administration, we began to hear racist statements, racist positions, statements historically we would have called un-American. And the Trump administration created an environment and a comfort zone for racists and those who subscribe to that particular premise to operate. And then it doesn't get any better when you have the U.S. president saying what he said about the killing in Charlottesville, Virginia. So there is a group of people, and they've always been there. We saw when Obama made a State of the Union address, when you had the congressman from South Carolina disrespecting the office of the presidency.
Scream liar.
Yes. So it's been there, but we have an administration that makes it very comfortable and very easy to express those sentiments.
Only one reason Donald Trump won the presidency, and that's Hillary Clinton. I think we.
Well, white women. That's another conversation. White women took him over the top.
Democrats.
The greatest benefactors of affirmative action. The greatest benefactors of affirmative action.
Dan, if this I mean, of course we know that Mildred's right. This has bubbled under the surface forever. Is it inescapable to tie all this new sensitivity to the election from last year, where we are politically now?
Well, again, I didn't really come on the show expecting to talk about politics. But
you got to roll with it.
But it's
Didn't you know you were coming on Flashpoint?
A curve there, and I think that one of the things that is really affecting the discussion is people are finally coming to the grips of the reality of what, in many cases, what was really underlying the Civil War, that slavery and racism and white supremacy were the underlying foundations of the Confederacy. The Vice President of the Confederacy, Alexander Stephens, referred to slavery as the cornerstone of the Confederacy.
And yet we have a lot of Southerners now, though, who I think seem to feel that they're simply celebrating where they live, this family heritage.
Well, when we raise monuments to people, keeping in mind that the purpose is to celebrate, you use the word correctly, but we have to think, what are we celebrating? If Robert E. Lee, for example, just using him as an example, if Robert E. Lee and the Confederacy had been victorious, the Confederate States of America would have been established as an independent nation with 4 million people held as slaves. I don't find that something to celebrate.
Look, monuments are symbols. They're symbols for something much bigger, right, than just simply history. They're symbols as well for the legacy of slavery that we have all inherited.
Take care of the phones. Crying out loud, what a rookie mistake.
Can I answer?
No, can you answer?
And the monuments are also a symbol of our failure to deal with that legacy of slavery. Today, we are still talking about voter suppression. We have a commission on electoral integrity inventing a problem that doesn't exist and presumably wanting to put forward laws that would suppress the vote. This is the same problem we had 100 years ago. It's the same problem we had 200 years ago. We unfortunately have not made the kind of progress we should have, and this is the result.
And I would caution again that we don't want to fall back into that very comfortable position that all the racism lives in the South. They were
certainly.
You know, there were no Confederate flags flying over Detroit when it was the most segregated metro area in the country. But I want to get back to something Carrie said about violence and speech. Obviously, violence is not free speech. You have a right to free speech. You don't have a right to a platform. You don't have a right to a camera lens. And I wonder what would happen if we let these couple of hundred ragtag knuckleheads jerks show up someplace and we didn't come, and the protesters didn't come. I bet that would be the last rally they held.
Mildred, it's interesting. I mean, there is, I think, an argument made with that, and then others would argue that the worst thing we can do is ignore this.
Well, I think that when you have a Steve Bannon, I know he's gone now, but when you have those kind of folk in the near the highest the heartbeat of the highest office in the land, it's pretty much saying, we welcome you. Think about this. Who else other than Donald Trump would have invited someone like that? It was very clear to us who he was. Then we have an attorney general. I call him George Wallace reincarnated. I mean, the message is coming from this Trump White House that we're not interested in being a free America with equal access to everybody. I mean, it's very, very clear.
Let me carry quickly one point that was emailed to me this week, and that is that we're just getting, everybody's way too sensitive. Everybody is so offendable. Katoy has to change its restaurant name here in town. The mayor now telling us that he's ready to strip Kobo off of. Everybody just needs to realize that everything's a little imperfect, but that we all need to just settle down.
Well, but it is a highly charged, highly toxic
no doubt
atmosphere, which isn't helped by having, I think, the current Attorney General in office threatening to take away people's rights. And rather than just saying people are sensitive, I think we really need to listen to each other, and we really need to try to understand why tempers are so high.
Carrie, you get the last word. Thank you very much for being here, gang. We could go another 2 hours, I'm fairly certain. But when we come back, John McElroy is here. What do we do at the Motor City if nobody's really driving? This is Flashpoint. Welcome back. For 20 years now, John McElroy has held court on Autoline, dissecting the Motor City and its signature industry. And as we wish him a happy 20th anniversary coming up here in about 2 weeks, we ponder what the next few years are going to hold. This program would be far less if it hadn't been for John McElroy's help over the years on Auto Matters. Great to have you here, John, and congratulations. 20 years at Autoline's fantastic.
Thanks so much, Devin. Yeah, that's really saying something, isn't
really
it?
Is.
I mean, even I have to brag about it.
It's pretty great. But we are at such a fascinating moment for this industry, for this city, this region. I was with some design people recently, and as they look at the mobility world that is coming on us, now, these are people who grew up drawing cars when they should have been in math, studying math and all that stuff, with these flights of fancy. And now, if we're going to move to these sort of little modules that we all get in that just sort of take us where we need to, and then it goes off and picks up somebody else, I'm wondering about what's going to happen to the romance of this industry.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I spent most of junior high and high school drawing cars.
You're the guy.
I didn't draw as well as those guys did. No, look, it's. I don't think personal ownership is ever going to go away.
You don't.
But there's no question that a lot of people are going to say, I don't need to own a car anymore. I can get a car whenever I need it through Zipcar or Uber and Lyft or whatever it happens to be. So I think, though, the interior of the car is going to change, and it's going to be dramatic for the designers. Because once you go to full autonomy, and that's a little bit down the road here.
Yes, but foreseeable now.
Now you can do anything in the car. So I see cars, interiors, becoming reconfigurable. You want to go to sleep, you want to cook a meal, you want to have a conference call, you want to have a meeting, you want to watch a movie, So the interior is going to become far more important than today.
But you see it as personalized because you do still see people having their own way of getting around and not just relying on, because I think a lot of us have assumed that if everything is going to be connected to a system, then there's really no point in me. In fact, financially, it's going to get tough for me to argue owning one.
Here's why it's still going to matter, because you're right. There's going to be a lot of fleets, and if I only want to go from A to B, I don't care what the car is. I just want it to be clean and get me there.
Right.
But if somebody shows up in something really special and different that none of the fleets have, everyone's going to go, wow, look at that. And that's why I think personal ownership, and not just for the rich either, I mean for common ordinary people, I think that personal ownership, even though it's going to be much shrunk down from how many people buy them, it's still going to be there.
But if we're going to shrink it down, then we probably have to come to realize there's going to be fewer car companies, fewer employees of said companies. This is really going to be a challenge for Detroit and Michigan to move its way into the future.
Already is. Go back 20 years ago when I started Autoline. General Motors was the biggest car company in the world. Ford was number 2. Today, General Motors is number 4. Ford is number 6. So the change has already started. And I think we're going to see an acceleration of this. But I got to tell you, too, in another decade or so, being the biggest could be a disadvantage.
May not be so great.
Could be a disadvantage.
In fact, wouldn't you rather be Tesla than a lot of companies right now? Or does Tesla have its own set of problems as they try to figure out how in the world they meet this demand and all these deposits they've taken on this new vehicle that they now have to create?
You know, Elon Musk and Tesla have a lot of issues. But I tell you, they've proven the critics wrong at almost every step. And I got to tell you, recently it just hit me. Elon Musk reminds me a lot of Henry Ford.
Yes.
You know, geniuses on one hand, very complicated, and even troubled on the other.
Yes, I totally see the connection. If we accept then that this new world is going to be something other than what we've had, how do you feel Detroit is doing at becoming? We seem to be in competition with Silicon Valley now as much as we are with Frankfurt or Tokyo. How are we doing?
I think we're doing terrific, to be honest. I think the state and the industry and the legislature and the governor are doing so many of the right things. They're laying everything out there. Now, I'm not going to tell you it's all going to work and we're going to come out of this, you know, on the top of the heap. But we're putting the processes, the legislation, the investment, the R&D in place to really be a player in this.
We've watched recently that Chrysler, which I think a lot of people thought was sort of lagging on this enterprise since Bill Ford Jr. talks about almost nothing other than mobility now. Chrysler now teaming up with BMW and trying to get with this new autonomous world.
Yeah, so the industry has always faced a decision. Do you make it or do you buy it? GM and Ford are deciding we're going to make it, all this autonomous stuff. FCA and BMW and others are saying, no, let's turn to the supplier community so that we don't have to put all that money out there. We're going to see which philosophy is the right one.
Kind of a wiki approach in a way, getting as many people involved as they can. Are you bullish on the industry right now, or are we? Do we have to find a new way to make our way forward in Detroit?
I think we have to find a new way forward.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to designers, as you were talking about, and technical people, and at the executive level, I think this is a solid industry. When it comes to the people in the plants, we got to think out more.
Big congratulations on 20 years at Autoline. It's always great to have you on the program. If I don't see you before, I know we'll have our annual get-together at the auto show.
Terrific. Thanks, Devin.
Thanks, John McElroy from Autoline. Thanks so much for being here. Meet the Press coming up next. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Flashpoint.